When the Duke of Harwick knocked on Eleanor Ashworth's door that morning, Eleanor was in the kitchen counting stale breadcrumbs. It was 7 o'clock. No duke knocked on a door at 7 in the morning. No duke ever knocked on Eleanor Ashworth's door. The maid, Molly, came rushing in, nearly running. Her face was pale as chalk. Her hands were trembling. Her voice would not come. She stood in the doorway, opening and closing her mouth, then opening it again. "My lady," she managed at last, "there is a visitor downstairs." Eleanor set the crumbs aside. "Who?" Molly swallowed. "The Duke of Harwick, my lady." Eleanor felt nothing in that moment. Later, this would seem strange to her. Fear did not come, surprise did not come, only silence, as if her mind refused to process those two words together, the Duke of Harwick, in this house, on this street, this morning. Then her mind began to work, and she wished it had not, because it told her immediately and mercilessly only one thing: this must be a mistake. She paused on the stairs as she descended. She wiped her hands on her apron, then noticed the apron and pulled it off, tossing it over the banister. She adjusted her hair, then wondered what the point of adjusting her hair was. The Duke of Harwick had come to the wrong address. Perhaps he was looking for a neighbor. Perhaps he meant to deliver a message. Perhaps nothing. No one came looking for Eleanor Ashworth. No one ever did. When she opened the drawing-room door, the man was standing. He was turned toward the window, the gray London morning light falling across his shoulders. Tall, upright, every line of his black coat in place. He turned as she entered. His face was as cold as she had expected, but his eyes were waiting for her, as if he had already arrived long before, as if he had always been there. "Miss Ashworth," he said, his voice low. "Your Grace," said Eleanor. She was surprised her voice did not betray her. A brief silence followed. Molly had closed the door, but Eleanor could still feel her gaze through the narrow gap. Richard Blackwell, Duke of Harwick, took a small white envelope from his pocket and placed it on the table. "My solicitor met with yours yesterday morning," he said, "but I preferred to come in person." Eleanor looked at the envelope, then at him. "I do not have a solicitor," she said. "I know. That is why I came to you first." Eleanor did not open the envelope. She could not because her hands failed her, but because she knew that once she opened it, whatever lay inside would become real, and she was not yet ready for that. "What does this envelope want from me?" she asked. Richard Blackwell took one step forward, just one, but the room was small, and that single step filled it. "It wants you," he said. "I want you. I am offering you marriage, Miss Ashworth." A carriage passed outside. Molly coughed behind the door. London's grey morning went on unchanged. But inside Eleanor Ashworth, something, small, fragile, something she had hidden for years, suddenly froze solid. Because her mother's voice came back to her, just as it always did. "Nothing comes without a price, Eleanor. Nothing." She left the envelope on the table, looked at the man. "Why?" she asked, nothing more. There were no other words. Nothing changed in Richard Blackwell's face, but for a moment, only a moment, something passed through his eyes. Eleanor did not know him well enough to name it. "The answer to that question," he said, "is not inside the envelope." He took his hat, walked to the door, then turned. "I will await your answer, Miss Ashworth. You are in no haste." He paused. But if you give it before London begins to talk, it will be better for you both." The door closed. Eleanor did not move for a long time. Then she walked to the table, took the envelope, drew out the paper inside, 1 page, formal, cold, every word precisely in place, every seal intact. A marriage proposal. It was real, not the wrong address, not a mistake. The Duke of Harwick wanted Eleanor Ashworth. And Eleanor Ashworth, the daughter of a fallen woman, stood alone in her small drawing room at the far edge of London, holding that paper, and thought, "This is a trap. It must be. But what if it isn't?" The news reached every drawing room in London exactly 14 hours after Eleanor set the envelope back on the table. Eleanor had not calculated that. She should have. Molly had a mouth, and Molly's sister's husband was a waiter at the largest coffee house in Grosvenor Square. The morning had barely broken when the first letter arrived. From Vivienne Carlyle. "Eleanor, come at once, now. I have not told my mother, but I will. Hurry." Vivienne Carlyle's house was 12 streets away from Eleanor's. In London, 12 streets meant a different world. Vivienne's house was filled with wide staircases, gleaming brass knockers, corridors that always smelled of fresh flowers. Every time Eleanor visited, she felt herself shrink a little, before the door even opened, before she stepped inside, before anyone saw her. But this morning, it was Vivienne herself who opened the door, and there was an expression on her face Eleanor had never seen before. Was it jealousy? No, something more complicated, something layered, surprise hidden within jealousy, fear hidden within surprise, and beneath it all, something deeper that did not wish to be seen. Vivienne smiled. Her smile was flawless, always flawless. "Come in," she said. "We must speak before my mother comes down." They went into the small sitting room, not the formal drawing room, but the family room. That had always comforted Eleanor. It meant Vivienne had truly let her in. Vivienne closed the door, turned. "The Duke of Harwick," she said. "Nothing more." "Yes," said Eleanor. "He wants you." "Yes." Vivienne stared at her for a long moment, then sat down as if her legs could no longer hold her. "Why?" she asked. Eleanor had been hearing that question since the night before, first in her own mind, then in Molly's eyes, now in Vivienne's voice. Why? As if everyone already knew the answer, but refused to say it, as if the question were simple yet carried something heavy within it. Why you? Why Eleanor Ashworth? Why the daughter of a fallen woman? "I don't know," said Eleanor. It was the truth, and sometimes the truth was the most exhausting thing. Vivienne rose, walked to the window, stood there for a moment. "London is talking," she said. "3 different people asked me at Lady Harmon's dinner last night. This morning my mother received 2 letters." She paused. "Some envy you." "Some?" asked Eleanor. Vivienne turned, smiled, but this time the smile was tired. You can imagine the rest. Eleanor could. Some envied her, some laughed, some did not believe it, and some, the most dangerous, were not asking why, but how to prevent it. Because the Duke of Harwick was not merely a name. Richard Blackwell was the bearer of a 600-year title, 4 great estates, a powerful voice in Parliament, the most sought-after guest in London, the least speaking man, the most watched face.
And that face had stood yesterday morning in Eleanor Ashworth's pale drawing room. "I must warn you," said Vivian. Her voice had changed, no longer playful, now real. Eleanor felt the shift, and something in her tightened. Lord Pembury was at Lady Harmon's dinner last night. When he heard the news, he was not surprised. She paused. He smiled. "What does that mean?" "I don't know." Vivian's voice lowered. "But Pembury never smiles without reason. He smiles only when he sees someone losing." Silence fell over the room. Outside, the city went on. Hoofbeats, street vendors, the unending noise of London. Everything was normal. Everything continued. But in Eleanor's mind, only one question remained. When Pembury smiled, who did he see losing? Me or Richard Blackwell? At that moment, the door opened. Lady Carlisle entered, powdered hair, perfectly fitted corset, flawless even at this early hour. Her eyes fell on Eleanor. She paused.
Then she put on that familiar, measured, cold smile. Not a greeting, an evaluation. "Eleanor, my dear," she said, "how lovely to see you." A pause. So early. Eleanor rose, curtsied. "Lady Carlisle." "Sit, sit." The woman settled into her chair, removed her gloves, placed them neatly on the table. No haste. She had all morning, it seemed. Time for Eleanor. That was not a good sign. "I received interesting news yesterday," Lady Carlisle said, pouring tea. "Did you?" Eleanor replied. "About the Duke of Harwick's visits." She handed her the cup, eyes fixed on her. "I do hope everything is in order." "I do hope everything is in order." In London, that meant many things. It meant, "I hope you understand where this is going." It meant, "I hope you know your place." It meant, "I hope you are not repeating your mother's mistakes." Eleanor took the tea, did not drink, just held it. "Everything is in order," she said. "Thank you, Lady Carlisle." When she left, Vivian walked her to the door. At the top of the stairs, her voice dropped. "Eleanor." She hesitated, then continued. "Richard Blackwell never does anything without reason. Everyone knows that." Her eyes sharpened. "But neither does Pembury." Eleanor stepped forward, then turned. "What is between them?" she asked. Vivian's expression tightened. "The answer to that question," she said slowly, "can only be given by Richard Blackwell." When Eleanor stepped into the street, the wind struck her face. London was loud, crowded, indifferent, as it always was. But that morning, Eleanor noticed something new. Two women passed her. One looked, the other whispered. They are looking. Yesterday, this had not existed. Yesterday, Eleanor Ashworth had been invisible, neither beautiful nor plain, neither rich nor poor, neither sought nor avoided. She simply existed, and that was enough to remain unseen. But now the Duke of Harwick's name had attached itself to hers, and in London, once a name attached itself, it never came off. As she turned the corner on her way home, Eleanor stopped. Across the street, as he was stepping into a carriage, she saw a man watching her. He was older, in his 60s, broad-shouldered, expensively dressed. She did not recognize him, but he recognized her, because he smiled. Exactly as Vivian had described, not without reason, but with the kind of smile whose reason only he knew. Then he stepped into the carriage, the door closed, it drove away. Eleanor did not move. Vivian's voice echoed in her mind. Pembury only smiles when he sees someone losing. Something cold passed through her, not fear, but something related to it. How can I be sure I won't be the one who loses? She had not given an answer yet. The envelope still lay on her table, and the Duke of Harwick was waiting. Lady Ashworth was not ill. Everyone knew this: the doctor, the neighbors, Eleanor. But her mother had lived as if she were ill for years. Curtains drawn, room dim, most days spent in bed. As if the world forgot her, she could forget the world. Eleanor had believed that for a long time. She did not anymore. When she went up to her mother's room, it was past noon. She opened the door slowly. She always did, as if a sudden sound might break something. The room was dim, always dim. It smelled of lavender, slightly damp, slightly heavy. Lady Ashworth was sitting upright in bed. She was holding a letter. She did not look at Eleanor. "Sit," her mother said. Eleanor sat. The chair was cold. Lady Ashworth lowered the letter, placed it in her lap. Her hands remained on it, as if pressing it down, as if it might otherwise drift away. Then she looked at Eleanor. Catherine Ashworth had once been one of the most beautiful women in London. This was not Eleanor's own memory. It was something told by others, a fragment of an old story. Eleanor had always known her this way, pale-skinned, tired-eyed, softened at the edges. But this morning, there was something different in her eyes. Fear. Real, deep, long-hidden fear. "The Duke of Harwick came here yesterday morning," Eleanor said. "I know," her mother replied. "How?" Her mother did not answer. She looked at the letter. "Mother," Eleanor leaned forward, "who is that letter from?" Lady Ashworth lifted the letter, placed it into the drawer of the table, and locked it. "How old are you?" her mother asked. "You know that." "Say it." 22. Her mother lowered her head. For a moment she remained that way, as if weighing something, deciding which words to choose. "When I was 22, she said at last, "I entered the brightest drawing rooms in London." This voice was flat, neither wistful nor nostalgic, just flat. "Everyone knew me, everyone smiled at me, everyone wanted something from me." She paused. "And I gave it to all of them." Eleanor waited. She knew her mother's past, what everyone knew. The scandal with Lord Whitmore, the escape, the child, the woman left alone. That was the story. A single line in London's language: Catherine Ashworth, fallen. But she had never known the details, because her mother had never told them. "Lord Whitmore was married," said Lady Ashworth. "You know that." "Yes. But what you do not know is this: who was Whitmore's closest friend?" Something tightened inside Eleanor. Her mother looked at her. "Pembury," she said. "Lord Pembury." Silence filled the room. A bird chirped outside, thin, meaningless, mistimed. Eleanor tried to speak, but no words came. Only the name circled in her mind. Pembury. The man smiling in the street that morning. The man Vivienne had warned her about. The man who was said to be Richard Blackwell's enemy. And now, the man in her mother's past. "What did Pembury do?" Eleanor asked. Her mother stood, walked to the window and pulled the curtain slightly aside. Gray London light spilled in, cutting across her face. "He told Whitmore's wife everything," she said. "Every letter, every meeting, every detail." Her voice did not tremble. Too many years had passed for that. "He created the scandal. He sacrificed me to save Whitmore." "Why?" "Because Whitmore had something Pembury wanted: land, an inheritance, a promise." She gave a small, tired shrug. "I never learned the details, but I learned the outcome." Eleanor stood. Something inside her was settling into place, wrongly, painfully, but settling. "Is Pembury doing the same thing now to Richard Blackwell?" she asked. Her mother turned. "I don't know," she said, "but I do know this." Her voice lowered. "Pembury used a woman once, and that woman became your mother." Her eyes locked onto Eleanor's. "Do not let that woman be you this time." The words turned over in Eleanor's mind. "Do not let that woman be you this time." But there was something her mother was not saying. Eleanor could feel it, beneath the words, inside the silence, behind the locked drawer. "Who is that letter from?" she asked again. Her mother did not answer. "Mother." Lady Ashworth stepped away from the window, returned to the bed, sat upright, hands in her lap, spine straight, carrying that weary dignity she had worn for years. "Someone who values you," she said at last. "Who?" Her mother raised her head. Her eyes were full, but no tears fell. She would not allow them to. "Richard Blackwell," she said. "He wrote last night. He is asking for permission." She paused. "For you." Eleanor did not move. The room seemed to tilt, slowly, silently. The lavender scent grew heavier. Her mother's eyes remained full, but still no tears fell. Richard Blackwell had written to her mother, not before the proposal, after. He had stood before Eleanor that morning, made his offer, then gone home and written a letter to her mother, asking permission. Why? No duke in London did such a thing. No one's mother was Eleanor Ashworth's mother. No one's mother was Catherine Ashworth, fallen, marked, hidden behind drawn curtains. And yet, Richard Blackwell had written. "What did he say?" Eleanor asked. Her voice came out. This surprised her. Her mother glanced at the drawer, then back at her. "He wrote that he values you," she said. "You. Both of you. The Ashworth name." Her voice broke, just for a moment, then steadied. "He wrote that your family's past does not diminish his offer. On the contrary." Eleanor sat down. Her legs would not hold her. Her mother continued, her voice still even, still steady, but her eyes remained full. "For 20 years, not a single man has written such words." She paused. "Not a single man has looked at us, at you, like that." Silence. Long, heavy, full silence. Eleanor looked at her mother, at her hands, worn, tired hands resting in her lap. How many things had those hands held over the years? How many letters? How many door handles? How many empty mornings? And now, the locked drawer. "But," her mother said. Eleanor waited. "But Pembury will want to finish this." Her voice hardened, an old hardness not forgotten. "And Pembury holds my past in his hands, every document, every paper, every detail." Her eyes darkened. "If he cares for you, if he truly cares, he will use it, not against you, but against him. And then what will Richard Blackwell do?" Eleanor did not answer, because she did not know. Because she did not know Richard Blackwell, not truly. He had stood before her for 10 minutes that morning, a cold-eyed man without explanation. He had written to her mother, yes, but that was not knowing him. What did a man do when he lost? What did a duke do under the eyes of London, cornered because of the daughter of a fallen woman? Would he step back? Her mother lay down. She was tired. Speaking always tired her. "Go," she said. "Think." Eleanor rose, walked to the door. "Eleanor?" She turned. Her mother was staring at the ceiling. Her voice came from far away, as if from a very old place. "If it is real," she said, paused, continued. "If he truly wants you, do not let it go." A moment passed. "Why?" Eleanor asked. Her mother closed her eyes. "Because I let it go," she said. "And carrying regret is far heavier than carrying joy." Eleanor closed the door. She stood in the corridor. the cold wall pressed against her shoulder. Downstairs, the envelope was still on the table. She had still not answered. But something inside her, the small, fragile thing she had hidden for years, did not freeze this time. This time, it trembled.
That night, Eleanor did not write a reply. She left the envelope on the table, extinguished the candle, went to bed, closed her eyes, did not sleep. The ceiling was white, cracked on the right corner, a small crack that had never grown. Eleanor knew it by heart. She had stared at it since childhood, on nights when she could not think, on nights when she could not cry. She looked at it now and heard her mother's voice. Carrying regret is far heavier than carrying joy. Morning came. Eleanor rose, washed her face, went downstairs. She did not look at the envelope. That day there was Lady Forsyth's tea. Eleanor did not usually attend such gatherings because she was not usually invited. But this week, London had changed, or rather, London's gaze upon Eleanor had changed. The invitation had arrived the night before, on thin cream paper bearing Lady Forsyth's signature. Vivian had sent it. Eleanor knew that. Vivian thought of everything. Lady Forsyth's house stood in Belgrave Square. Wide, bright, every corner arranged with calculated elegance. By the time Eleanor arrived, the drawing room was already full. 12, perhaps 15 women, each in different colors, each with the same kind of smile. When Eleanor entered, the conversations did not stop, but they slowed, which was worse. Vivian found her, took her arm, her voice low, quick, practical at her ear. Smile. Argue with no one. If Lady Harmond asks you anything, answer in monosyllables. Do not elaborate. Why Lady Harmond? Because Lady Harmond made 3 women cry this morning, and the day is not over. Vivian pulled her aside, and it is said she breakfasted with Pembury this morning. Eleanor froze. Pembury? That is the whisper. I have not confirmed it. Vivian's eyes swept the room, but Lady Harmond's presence here today is no accident. If Pembury is planning something, he will use her. He always does. Eleanor's mind went to her mother. He created the scandal. He used a woman once.
Tea was served. Eleanor sat, held her cup, smiled, or tried to. The woman beside her complimented her dress. Eleanor thanked her. The woman on her other side remarked on the weather. Eleanor agreed. It was all normal, all surface, and Eleanor could feel everything moving beneath that surface. Lady Harmond appeared at 3. She was in her 60s, broad, the kind of woman whose voice filled a room. Even when she laughed, she seemed severe. Eleanor knew her. Everyone did. Lady Harmond had started London's oldest gossip and would likely end its newest. She saw Eleanor and stopped. Then she walked toward her. "Miss Ashworth," she said. Her voice was sweet, which was not a good sign. "Lady Harmond." Eleanor rose and curtsied. "Sit, sit." The woman took the seat across from her, accepted her tea, and looked at Eleanor. Long, measuring, unashamed. "How do you find the season?" "Eventful," said Eleanor. Lady Harmond laughed, a genuine laugh, which made it worse. "Indeed it is." She took a sip. "The Duke of Hardwicke must find it so as well." The room did not fall silent, but that slowing came again, voices thinning, lowering, ears turning. Eleanor did not set her tea down. She held it to keep her hands from trembling. "I do not know the Duke well enough," she said. "I cannot comment on his opinions." Of course, Lady Harmond inclined her head. "You are only just acquainted." A pause. "But London is curious, you understand. Such sudden interest. Unexpected." Unexpected. The word carried everything. You did not deserve this. However it happened, do not become your mother. Eleanor was about to speak. She opened her mouth.
And at that exact moment, a voice came from the other side of the room. Old, heavy, familiar. Lord Pembury. Everyone turned. Lord Pembury stood in the doorway. Something dropped inside Eleanor. It was the man she had seen in the street the morning before, expensively dressed, broad, smiling. But he was not smiling now. He simply stood there, scanning the room as if searching for something. Then his eyes fell on Eleanor, and he smiled. This was not a usual moment for a tea gathering. Men did not attend such events. There were no exceptions. But Pembury had come, and Lady Forsyth had not stopped him. That meant she expected this visit. Vivian appeared at Eleanor's side. So quickly her footsteps had not even been heard. "Leave," she whispered. "Now." "Why?" "Because he came for you." But it was too late. Pembury was already approaching. He walked slowly, unhurried. Why should he hurry? The room was his already. Everything was his already. Lady Forsyth smiled at him. Lady Harmon shifted to make space. Two women stepped aside. He stopped in front of Eleanor. "Miss Ashworth," he said. His voice was deep, even, as though it contained nothing at all. "We have not been introduced." "Lord Pembury." Eleanor rose. As she curtsied, she realized something. Pembury's eyes. He was looking, but not seeing. Or he was seeing something else, as if Eleanor were not the one before him, as if he were looking through her at something beyond. My mother. He was seeing her mother. The realization struck Eleanor like a blow to the stomach. "How is your mother?" Pembury asked. Direct, without preamble, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Eleanor's hand trembled. She steadied herself. "She is well, thank you." "It has been years since I last saw her." Pembury inclined his head with false regret. "She was once a very lively woman. London must have missed her." Was, past tense. He had buried her in the past with a single sentence in front of the entire room. Something broke inside Eleanor. Not as if it broke, sharp, physical, real. "My mother," Eleanor said, "is still very lively." Her voice held, it did not tremble. Pembury's brow lifted, just slightly, but it lifted. "Of course," he said, smiling. "Of course she is." He turned, walked away, leaned toward Lady Harmon and whispered something. The woman inclined her head. Vivian gripped Eleanor's arm. "Come." This time Eleanor did not resist. They left through the back, through the narrow corridor beside the kitchen, the one the servants used. The cold air hit their faces outside. Vivian stopped, turned to her. "Are you all right?" "No," said Eleanor. Vivian said nothing. Sometimes that was the right answer. They stood there for a moment. The street was quiet. Somewhere in the distance, a horse passed. Eleanor thought. Pembury knew her mother, knew her past, and he had come here today, for her, to measure something. What was he measuring? "Can you be broken?" "Vivian," Eleanor said. "Yes?" "I need to find out what lies between Pembury and Richard Blackwell." Vivian went still, looked at her for a long moment. "That is dangerous," she said. "I know. You have already drawn Pembury's attention. That should have been enough. There was no need for more." "There is." Eleanor turned, her gaze steady, dark, composed. "Because today he used my mother's name in that room, in front of everyone." A pause. "And I want to answer him. But I cannot answer without knowing what I am facing." Vivian held her gaze for a long moment, then exhaled. "Richard Blackwell's father," she said slowly. won in court a piece of land that should have belonged to Pembury 20 years ago. She paused. Pembury never forgot. Eleanor waited. And that land, Vivian's voice lowered, it now belongs to Richard. Silence. Somewhere far away, a door shut. Everything fell into place in Eleanor's mind, not wrongly this time, but heavily, precisely. Pembury had carried his hatred from the father to the son for 20 years, and now Eleanor, the daughter of a fallen woman, the most vulnerable name in London, had appeared. A perfect weapon. What if he used her? What if he exposed her mother's past and forced Richard to withdraw from the marriage? What if Richard withdrew? When Eleanor returned home, she did not light a candle. She stood in the dim drawing room, saw the envelope on the table, still there, still waiting, still unanswered. But this time she saw it differently.
It was no longer just an offer. To open or close that envelope now meant stepping into Richard Blackwell's life, or stepping away. And Pembury was watching both. She sat down, took a pen. She waited a long time. Minutes passed. The room darkened without candlelight. London outside continued without pause. Then she wrote, a single line. My answer is yes. E.A. She sealed the envelope, called Molly. First thing in the morning, she said, this goes to the Duke of Harwick's house. Molly took it. Her hands trembled, whether from excitement or fear, Eleanor could not tell. The door closed. Eleanor did not move for a long time. Then her mother's voice came again, one last time for that night. If it is real, if he truly wants you, do not let it go. Eleanor closed her eyes. I did not let it go, she thought. Now we will see what he does. The morning Richard Blackwell received her answer, it was raining in London. Eleanor learned that later, not from Molly, but from elsewhere, at an unexpected moment. And when she learned it, she also learned what Richard Blackwell had done that morning. Nothing. He had not opened champagne. He had not summoned anyone. He had not even informed his solicitor immediately. He had simply taken the envelope, read it, placed it on the table, and walked to the window. The person who told Eleanor this was not his valet. It was the gardener. But that was not the beginning of the fifth act, only its middle. To understand it, one had to return to the beginning. After sending her answer, Eleanor heard nothing for 3 days. 3 days. On the first day, she waited, not impatient, but tense. On the second, she occupied herself, tidied her mother's room, played the piano, opened and closed a book she did not read. On the third, Vivian came. Any news? She asked, without even removing her hat. No, said Eleanor. Vivian sat, said nothing. That was one of her best qualities. She knew how to simply sit. On the fourth morning, a letter arrived. Not cream, white. No Harwick seal, only a simple R, unembossed. Eleanor opened it. Inside, one line. Tomorrow afternoon, Hyde Park, the edge of the Serpentine, 3 o'clock. R.B. It was not an invitation, not a question. Only a time, a place, and initials. Eleanor folded the paper and placed it in her pocket. Turned to Molly. Take out the blue coat for tomorrow, she said. Hyde Park at 3 was not empty, but along the eastern edge of the Serpentine, beneath the line of willows, few people walked. Most stayed to the west.
Children remained nearer the center. This quiet corner by the water felt like a world apart. Richard was there, alone. No valet, no guard. His gloved hands clasped behind his back, looking out over the water. His collar grazed, the wind was cold. Eleanor approached. He heard her footsteps before her voice. He turned. "Miss Ashworth." "Your Grace." A brief silence. The lake rippled, the wind bent the willows. London murmured in the distance. "Will you walk?" Richard asked. "Yes." They walked side by side. For the first few minutes, they did not speak. Eleanor had not expected that. A duke could be silent, yes, but not this comfortably. Most men grew uneasy in silence, tried to fill it with words, questions, compliments. Richard walked, followed the water's edge, sometimes looked ahead, sometimes at the lake. Eleanor remained silent as well. And something strange happened. The silence did not grow heavy. It became, after a while, almost natural. "Pembury visited you," Richard said. It was not a question. "We met at Lady Forsyth's tea," Eleanor replied. "What did he say?" Eleanor hesitated for a moment, then chose honesty, because she was too tired for anything else. "He used my mother's name, in the room, in front of everyone." Richard did not stop walking, but something changed. His shoulders, his jaw, something tightened. "What else?" "She looked at me," she said, as if measuring something. What was he measuring? Eleanor looked at the water. "Whether I could be broken." Richard stopped. Eleanor took 2 more steps, then stopped as well. Turned. He was looking at her. That same cold, distant, unreadable gaze. But this time, there was something in it. She could not name it. Not yet. "And what answer did he find?" Richard asked. Eleanor thought. "He wasn't certain," she said. "That is why he has not acted yet." Richard looked at her for a while. Then he continued walking. Eleanor fell into step beside him. "What is Pembury's issue with you?" she asked, directly, because she already knew Vivian's version of the story, but she wanted to hear Richard's, his version. He did not answer at once. He was silent for a long time, that same steady, unhurried silence. "An old land dispute," he said at last, "something inherited from your father." A moment passed. "Vivian Carlyle?" Richard said. It was not a question. "Yes." "It is not only about land," he continued. "For Pembury, everything is a calculation. The land was one calculation. You—" He stopped. Eleanor waited. He did not continue. One of the willows bent with the wind, its branches brushing the water before lifting again. "And I am what?" Eleanor asked. Richard looked at the lake. "To Pembury," he said. "You are the easiest move." The easiest move. These words did something strange to Eleanor. Did they hurt her? Not exactly. Did they anger her? A little. But at the same time, unexpectedly, they steadied her. Because if Richard had not said it, she would never have understood him fully. And he had said it, directly, without ornament, without softening. "You chose me knowing that," Eleanor said. "Yes. You still chose me." Richard turned, fully this time, not toward the water, but toward her. "Yes," he said. A moment passed. The lake rippled. The wind moved between them. Eleanor did not know this man. She had seen him 4 times. Her home, the dinner, this walk, and the exchange of letters. 4 encounters, a few hundred words, 2 silences. But those 2 words, yes, yes. Why? She asked. For the first time she asked him directly. She had not dared that morning, but now they were here, by the water. Penbury had been spoken of, the land had been spoken of, and Eleanor was tired. Tired of waiting, of suspecting, of searching for traps in every corner. She wanted an answer. Richard did not reply immediately. He walked a few steps toward the water beneath the willows. Stopped. His gloved fingers brushed together, the leather making a soft sound. Then he turned. "I knew your mother," he said. Eleanor went still. "What?" "Knew is not the right word," Richard corrected. "I saw her once, years ago. I was young, she was younger. It was at a garden gathering. She laughed." He paused. "Very few people in London truly laugh. She did." Eleanor could not speak. "I know everything that followed. I know what Pembury did. I know Whitmore fled." His voice did not change, calm, even, but weighted. "And I know how you were raised." "How was I raised?" "Alone." His eyes fixed on hers, "and under a name you never deserved." Something inside Eleanor trembled. She would not cry. She had decided that long ago. She always decided it. But the trembling would not stop. "That is a form of pity," she said. Her voice held, and she was grateful for it. "Did you choose me out of pity?" "No." "Then—" "Because I watched you," he said. "Not this season, the last. At a concert. You would not know it. You were in the back row. When you listened to the music, your face changed." He paused. "Only then. Not when you spoke, not when you smiled. Only with the music." Silence. Long, strange, full silence. Eleanor did not know what to say, because it was true. Something in her shut out the noise of London, her mother's voice, Pembury's smile, everything. Only the notes remained, and Richard had seen it, years ago, from the back row. "That is not enough reason," she said. "It is not," he said, "but it is a beginning." He began walking again, back towards the path, towards the park exit. Eleanor stood still for a moment, then followed. When they reached the edge of the park, Richard stopped. They stood before his carriage. The valet opened the door. Richard turned to her. "Pembury will make a move," he said. "I do not know when, but he will." He paused. "I want you to be ready." "How should I prepare?" Eleanor asked. He looked at her for a moment. "Know me," he said. "Not from gossip, not from others, from me." He stepped into the carriage. The door closed. He left. Eleanor remained on the pavement. The wind struck her face, cold, carrying the scent of London, smoke and stone. One thought circled in her mind. Know me. The daughter of a fallen woman, a resident of London's farthest edge, a woman who had spent 22 years learning how to remain unseen, Eleanor Ashworth stood there and realized something. A duke had asked her to know him, as if he wanted to be known, as if he was not afraid of being known. When she returned home, her mother was downstairs. For the first time in weeks, curtains open, hair brushed, a cup of tea in her hand. She stood by the window. Eleanor stepped in, stopped. "Mother?" Lady Ashworth turned, looked at her face, that long, reading look mothers had. "Did it go well?" she asked. Eleanor was surprised. She had told no one where she had gone, but her mother knew. She always knew. "I don't know," Eleanor said honestly. Her mother inclined her head. "I don't know is a better answer, more honest than I do." Eleanor removed her coat, sat down. For a while they were both silent, but this was not the heavy silence of her mother's room. It was lighter, almost normal. "My face changes when I listen to music," Eleanor said. Her mother set her tea aside. "Your father's did too," she said. Eleanor lingered with that sentence. Her mother never spoke of her father. Never. Not a single word. Eleanor had stopped asking years ago. But now she had said it, of her own accord. That night, Eleanor sat at the piano. She did not play at once. She simply sat, her hands resting on the keys. The ivory was cold. Then she played. Not for Pembury, not for London, not for Richard. Just played, and her face changed. The move came on a Tuesday morning. Eleanor did not expect it. Tuesdays were the most ordinary days in London. On Mondays, gossip refreshed. On Wednesdays, invitations were sent. Tuesday stood in between, colorless, forgettable. Perhaps Pembury knew that. Perhaps that was exactly why he chose Tuesday. It was just past 9. Eleanor was having tea, her mother upstairs, Molly in the kitchen. Everything was normal, with that strange, fragile normalcy of the past 2 weeks. The door knocked. Molly opened it. A boy stood there, 12, perhaps 13, holding a brown parcel. No name on it, only an address, Eleanor's address. "Who sent this?" Molly asked. The boy shrugged. "A gentleman," he said. "He paid me, said nothing else." Eleanor opened the parcel at the kitchen table. Inside were documents, yellowed, old, some stained with ink, but legible, every one of them. Dates from 30 years ago, names clear. Catherine Ashworth, Lord Whitmore. Every meeting, every place, every date. And at the bottom, on a newer, whiter sheet, something Eleanor had never seen before. A birth certificate. Eleanor held the paper, read it, once, twice. On the third, she stopped. Molly was still there, eyes wide, mouth half open. "Go," Eleanor said. Molly went. Eleanor sat. For a long time. Outside, the city went on. Hoofbeats, vendors, London's endless rhythm. Everything continued. The world moved. But the paper in Eleanor's hand, this paper changed everything. There were 2 names on the certificate, her mother and a father's name. It was not Whitmore. Eleanor went upstairs. She knocked on her mother's door, did not wait for an answer. She entered. Lady Ashworth was in bed, but awake. A book in her hand, not reading it, just holding it. Her eyes turned to the door. She saw Eleanor, and her face changed. Eleanor had seen many things in her mother's face. Weariness, sorrow, old anger, rarely, very rarely, pride. But this was different. Not fear, something deeper, older, surrender. As if a door she had been waiting for had finally opened, and she no longer had the strength to hold it closed. Eleanor held out the document. Her mother did not take it, did not even look. "You know," Eleanor said, not a question. "I know," her mother said. "Since when?" "Always." Eleanor lowered the paper, sat at the edge of the bed, near her mother's feet. only inches between them. "Tell me," she said. Lady Ashworth set the book aside, folded her hands in her lap, looked toward the window, the curtains still drawn, her face gray in the dim light. "Before Whitmore," she said, "there was someone else." Her voice was flat, not a story long told. This was the first time it was being spoken, its weight present in every word. "Who?" Eleanor asked. Her mother paused. "James Hartwell," she said. "He had a small estate and a large heart, but no money." A tired shrug. "My mother refused him. My father refused him. At the time, so did I. I had already learned how to refuse." Eleanor waited. "Whitmore was wealthy, prestigious, married, but in London that was not an obstacle, as you know." Her voice did not grow bitter. It remained even, factual. "What happened with Whitmore happened. Pembury exposed everything. Whitmore fled." A pause. "I remained." "And James Hartwell?" Her turned for the first time, looked at her. "James came when he heard of the scandal. He was the only one who came." Her voice faltered, just one syllable, then steadied. "He asked me to marry him, said he would claim you as his own." Her eyes filled. "I refused." "Why?" Eleanor asked. Her mother laughed, short, bitter, directed at herself. "Because I was ashamed," she said. "Because I thought he did not deserve to carry my burden. Because—" she stopped. "Because I was a foolish woman." Silence. Long, heavy, full. Eleanor looked at the birth certificate, then at her mother. "James Hartwell's name is on this document," she said. "Yes. Then that means he is your father," her mother said, closing her eyes. "Yes." Eleanor did not move. The room did not spin. She expected it to, but it did not. Perhaps she had seen enough by now for such news. Perhaps even shock grew tired. Or perhaps she had always known, somewhere. "How did Pembury obtain this document?" she asked. Her mother opened her eyes. "From James's solicitor," she said. "James died 5 years ago. His solicitor kept everything in order, but there is nowhere Pembury cannot reach." Her voice hardened. "And now, with this document," Eleanor said, "my true identity can be questioned." She thought, "If I am not Ashworth, Pembury can expose it and force Richard to withdraw from the marriage." Her mother lowered her head. That was the answer. Eleanor stood, walked to the window, pulled the curtain aside. London outside was gray, damp, lost in the colorless anonymity of a Tuesday. She thought. Pembury had sent the document to her, not directly to Richard, to her. This was a warning. Withdraw, or I will reveal it. A quiet threat, an elegant threat, a gentleman's threat. And Eleanor had 2 choices, withdraw or remain. "Does James Hartwell have any other legacy?" Eleanor asked. Her mother looked surprised. She had not expected the question. "What do you mean? Is the solicitor still active? Where else are the documents kept?" Her mother thought. "James had a sister in Sussex, Margaret." She paused. "Why are you asking?" Eleanor let the curtain fall, turned. Her face was steady, calm, but something burned beneath it. Not fear, something like fear, but not quite. Anger. Clean, cold, long-awaited anger. "Because," Eleanor said, "Pembury wants to use this document as a weapon, but every weapon has 2 edges." She picked up the paper. "If this document is real, and I can see that it is, then it does not destroy me. She paused. It makes me different, but it does not destroy me. Her mother watched her, long, searching, almost disbelieving. You want to stop Pembury? She said. Not stop him, Eleanor replied. I want to be ready. Something passed through her mother's eyes. Eleanor recognized it. It was the same thing that had once been in the eyes of the woman who had truly laughed years ago at a garden gathering. Life. I need to tell Richard, Eleanor said. I know, her mother replied. Everything. I know. A moment passed. What if he runs? Her mother asked. Her voice was low, afraid of her own question. Eleanor held the paper. Thought. She heard Richard's voice in her mind, low, even, unadorned. To Pembury, you are the easiest move, and still I chose you. He won't run, Eleanor said. She was not certain, but she said it. Because sometimes believing something was the first step toward making it real.
That night, Eleanor wrote a note. It was not long, 3 lines. We need to speak, not tomorrow, today. I am waiting for you. E.A. She gave the envelope to Molly. Molly left. Eleanor sat in the drawing room, by the candle, holding the document. She read her father's name, James Hartwell, silently, as if learning a name for the first time in truth. James. At 11, the door was knocked. Eleanor opened it. Richard stood there. His coat was wet. It had begun to rain, though Eleanor had not noticed. No valet again. Alone, wet, cold, and present. She was about to say, "You received my note," but Richard spoke first. Pembury sent something to 3 people this morning. A document, an old birth record. His eyes locked onto hers. He sent it to you as well, didn't he? Eleanor stepped back. Come in, she said. They went into the drawing room. Eleanor picked up the document from the table, handed it to him. Richard took it, looked, read. His face did not change, not at all. Eleanor watched him closely, every fraction, searching for the smallest tension, the slightest retreat. There was none. He placed the document on the table. Did you know James Hartwell? He asked. No, said Eleanor. I learned tonight. Your mother. She told me tonight. Richard inclined his head, thought, or appeared to, but Eleanor noticed something. He had not been surprised by the document. Did you know this? Eleanor asked. Richard looked at her. I knew the name Hartwell. I did not know the document existed. But you investigated her past. Yes. Why? Because I know Pembury, and Pembury always finds the weakest point. He paused. I needed to find yours before he did. Eleanor sat. Her legs would not hold her this time.
Richard sat across from her. Between them, the table, the document, the candle. What happens now? She asked. Pembury sent this to 3 people. By tomorrow morning, it will be in every drawing room in London. His voice was even, calm, measured, accustomed to planning. There are 2 options. We reveal it before he does, or his version reaches them first. And if we reveal it, we keep control. He paused. But it will still be discussed. And if we don't, London will know you through Pembury's version. His gaze darkened. In that version, you are not your mother's daughter. You are her repetition. Eleanor absorbed that. Slowly, in the cold, in the flickering light of the candle. And you? She asked. What does this do to you? Richard looked at her for a moment. Nothing, he said. For a duke? Nothing, he repeated, this time firmer, sharper. Pembury did this believing it would affect me. He is mistaken. The trembling inside Eleanor stopped, froze, sharp, sudden, because there was nothing in his face as he said it, no performance, no persuasion. He simply said it, as if it needed to be said. Why? Eleanor asked. She always asked that question, always the same one. But this time was different. This time she wanted a real answer. Richard stood, walked to the window, looked outside, the rain still falling, London dark and wet. He was silent for a long time. Eleanor waited, not impatiently this time, truly waited. "My father," Richard said at last, "told me something before he died. He said Pembury ruined a woman. He did not say her name, but I saw his regret. My father did not regret often." He paused. "Years later, I understood who he meant." He turned, looked at Eleanor. "Your mother." Eleanor stood, gripped the table, not to steady herself, just to touch something real. "Your father knew her story." "He did, and he knew what Pembury had done." Richard's voice carried something now. Not anger, something older. A debt. But at the time, he did not intervene. He could not. Pembury's influence was too great then. Silence. Long, full, unresolved silence. Eleanor thought. Richard's father had known, had not acted, and now Richard was here. "Is this a debt?" she asked. Her voice trembled. She tried to steady it, but it trembled. "Are you repaying your father's debt?" Richard looked at her. He did not answer immediately. And that pause, that small delay, cut through her. "At the beginning," he said, "perhaps." Eleanor was about to speak. "But at a concert," Richard continued, "I saw a woman in the back row, lost in the music." He paused. And the debt was forgotten. The candle flickered. The rain continued outside. Eleanor looked at him, long, trying to understand, still not fully able to. But she understood one thing. This man was not leaving. Not because of the document, not because of Pembury, not because of the past. He was staying. "What will we do in the morning?" she asked. Richard turned. For the first time, on that cold, distant face, something small, almost invisible, appeared. Not relief, not victory, only together. "In the morning," Richard said, "I will go to Pembury." "Alone?" "No." His eyes met hers. "You will go to Sussex." Eleanor blinked. "Sussex?" "Margaret Hartwell, James Hartwell's sister, your aunt." Eleanor went still. "Your aunt." The word hung in the room. Strange, new, not yet real. "Margaret Hartwell does not know me," Eleanor said. "She does," Richard replied. "James told her everything." A moment passed. Eleanor thought of her mother, upstairs in the dim room, hands folded in her lap. "James died," her mother had said, 5 years ago. But he had a sister, and she knew. "Why Sussex?" Eleanor asked. "What will I find there?" Richard took the final step. They stood across the table, the document, the candle, 2 cups of cold tea between them. "Before he died," Richard said, "James Hartwell left something, not with his solicitor, with his sister." He paused. "Pembury's document is real, but it is incomplete. What is missing?" Richard's eyes darkened, not cold, but resolute. "His letter he wrote for you." Eleanor forgot to breathe. For a moment, just a moment. Outside, the rain stopped. London fell into that rare, brief, almost unbelievable silence, and Eleanor Ashworth, the daughter of a fallen woman, stood there in that small drawing room before a dying candle and thought, "My father wrote a letter for me, and I have never read it."
The journey to Sussex took 4 hours. As Eleanor sat in the carriage, she felt London fall away behind her. First the houses thinned, then the streets ended, then the sound of stone gave way to the uneven rhythm of dirt roads. The noise, the smoke, the watching eyes of London were left behind. For the first time in weeks, Eleanor breathed. Truly breathed. Molly was with her. Molly always slept on journeys. Inevitably, 10 minutes after departure, her head would tilt to the side. That morning was no different. Eleanor covered her with a blanket and turned to the window. The countryside passed by, gray April fields not yet green. The trees were bare, but here and there small yellow shapes appeared, near hedges, at the base of shrubs. The first signs of spring. Eleanor looked at them and felt nothing. Then something. Then she cried, quietly, without waking Molly, facing the window. It did not last long. Short, sharp, something that had been building for weeks. Whether she cried for her father, for her mother, or for herself, she could not tell. Perhaps all three. Perhaps none. Molly slept. Eleanor watched the road. That morning she thought of Richard. He had left late the night before, turning at the door to say one last thing. "Margaret Hartwell is a good woman. She will want to see you." "Are you certain?" Eleanor had asked. Richard had paused. "No," he had said, "but James Hartwell was a good man. His sister will be the same." Then he had gone. Eleanor had closed the door, sat on the stairs, and remained there for a long time. And that same morning, Richard was going to Pembury, alone. The Pembury house in Mayfair was quiet in the early morning. When Richard knocked, it was just past 9. The valet opened the door, surprised and not concealing it. The Duke of Harwick was not expected. There had been no appointment, no invitation. "Tell Lord Pembury," Richard said, "that I will wait." He waited. 15 minutes. He stood in the entrance hall, did not sit, refused when offered. He stood, gloves in hand, looking out the window. The 15 minutes were Pembury's game. Make him wait, make him smaller, wear him down. Richard knew it, Pembury knew it. Both knew, and still the game was played. Because Pembury could not begin any other way. He was finally shown into the library. Pembury sat behind his desk, large, oak, smelling of decades of paper and ink. Shelves behind him, documents before him. He removed his spectacles and looked up. "Harwick," he said, cold, measured, familiar. "Pembury." Richard did not sit. He stood opposite the desk. A brief silence. "Sit," said Pembury. "Thank you. I will not be staying." Pembury's brow lifted. A small movement, but Richard knew it. Pembury raised his brow when he was surprised. He was rarely surprised. This was a good beginning. "What do you want?" Pembury asked. "To speak." "You chose to come in person this morning instead of writing last night." Pembury folded his arms. "Dramatic." "After you sent the document, writing would have been discourteous. Coming directly is more honest." Pembury laughed. A genuine laugh, which Richard surprised, though he did not show it. "Sit," Pembury said again. This time it was different, not an invitation, almost respect. Richard sat. The two men faced each other. Between them, the oak desk, the scent of old paper, and 30 years of reckoning. "Eleanor Ashworth," Pembury said. "Yes," said Richard. "Why?" Richard looked at him, did not answer immediately, measured what Pembury sought in the question. Weakness? Inconsistency? Or genuine curiosity? "I chose her," Richard said. "It is not for you to question why." Pembury's eyes narrowed. "You are repaying your father's debt," he said. "Not a theory, a conclusion." "Perhaps at the beginning," Richard replied. And now? Now it is my choice. Pembury leaned forward, interlaced his fingers, watched him, that calculating, unmistakably Pembury gaze. The document is real, he said. You know that? I do. She is not Ashworth then, technically. Technically, said Richard, that does not concern me. Pembury paused. A real pause this time, not the stage delay of 15 minutes. He had not expected this. A duke for a woman whose lineage could be questioned. London will laugh, Pembury said. London laughs at everything, and then it forgets. For this woman, you would risk your standing. Pembury, Richard's voice cut through, low but final. I am doing what your father did not do 30 years ago. You cannot stop it. Silence. The clock ticked in the corner, heavy, wooden, unrelenting. Nothing else moved. Pembury looked at him. Richard looked back. They both knew what this truly was. Not land. Land had been the beginning. This was something else now. This was Pembury's 30-year resentment, his anger at the Blackwell name always prevailing. And now Richard was prevailing again. The document is already with 3 people, Pembury said. It is no longer in my hands. I know. I cannot stop it. I know. Pembury's surprise showed this time. He could not conceal it. Then why did you come? Richard stood, took his gloves. To tell you this, he said. Do what you wish. Spread the document. Tell London. Do as you like. But know this. He paused. I chose Eleanor Ashworth, and Pembury's documents do not change me. He stepped forward. What your father could not do, you will not do either. He turned toward the door. Pembury said nothing. And that was what Richard had expected. When Pembury fell silent, he had lost. It was always so. Pembury could not bear silence. He always had to speak the last word. But that morning, he did not. Richard opened the door. Harwick. He turned. Pembury was standing now, in front of his desk, hands at his sides, standing inside the weight of 30 years. And yet, there was something in his face. Was it weariness? Perhaps. Catherine Ashworth. For what I did. He stopped, did not finish. Richard waited. Pembury did not continue. Perhaps he could not. After 30 years, perhaps the words still would not come. Richard paused a moment. Tell Eleanor, he said. Nothing more. Then he left. In Sussex, Margaret Hartwell's house was small. Red brick, ivy climbing its walls, a garden where the roses had not yet bloomed. Nothing like London. Quiet, complete in its own stillness. When Eleanor stepped out of the carriage, the door was already open. Margaret Hartwell was in her 60s, tall, silver-haired, her eyes a light brown. Eleanor felt something shift when she saw them. Familiar. Where had she seen that color? Nowhere. And yet, she knew it. Eleanor, the woman said. No question. Recognition came first, direct, almost longing. Miss Hartwell? Eleanor replied. Margaret laughed, warm, real, unlike anything heard in London drawing rooms. Margaret, she said, just Margaret. She stepped aside. Come, I have kept you waiting long enough. Years. I have no right to keep you waiting any longer today. They went into a small sitting room. A fire burned, real wood, soft smoke, warmth that filled the air. Eleanor held her hands towards it. Molly had been left outside. Margaret had looked at her, then at Eleanor, and let only Eleanor in. Eleanor had not objected. Tea was served. They were silent, but not the calculating silence of London. Just 2 people, newly met, measuring one another. What do you know of my father? Eleanor asked.
Margaret set down her cup. "Everything," she said. "James told me everything." She paused. "After your mother refused him," her voice softened, "he broke. For a long time he was broken. But then," she smiled, "then he recovered. That was who James was. He recovered." "Did he know me?" Eleanor asked.
This was the question she had traveled 4 hours to ask. The question she had perhaps waited 22 years to ask. Margaret stood. She went to a small wooden cabinet in the corner, opened it, took out a tin box, old, worn, with a small flower etched into the lid. She placed it on the table. "Open it," she said. Eleanor did. Inside were letters, yellowed, tied together, and at the top, whiter, newer than the rest, an envelope. On it, a single word, Eleanor. Eleanor took it. Her hands trembled. She held it, tried to still them, then let them tremble. She opened it. "My dear Eleanor, I have never seen you. I will always know this, and I will always carry it. Your mother kept you from me to protect you. I was never angry, never. Catherine always wanted what was best. She only chose it at the wrong time, out of the wrong fear. But you exist. That is enough. I heard of you. Margaret told me over the years, small things, that you play the piano, that you read, that you are quiet but observant. She is like you, Margaret said. I laughed. I leave you something. Not a document. That is in Pembury's hands, I know, I always knew. But this letter is yours, only yours. Whether you are Ashworth or not does not matter. Carrying a name is easier than deserving it. You have done both. You have carried it, and you have deserved it. Be happy, Eleanor. That is a father's only wish. James. Eleanor lowered the letter. She cried. This time she did not stop herself, did not try to. Margaret sat across from her, saying nothing, simply present. Sometimes that was the right thing. Eleanor cried, for her mother, for her father, for 22 years. Then she stopped, not by wiping it away, but by passing through it. Can this letter be used in court? Eleanor asked. Margaret blinked. She had not expected the question, at least not so quickly. Then she smiled. You are like James, she said. He always asked the most practical question, immediately after weeping. It can be used, Margaret said. James left instructions with his solicitor, if needed, if you wished it. But, she paused, Pembury's document will not destroy you, Eleanor. Do you understand that? I do, Eleanor said. Are you certain? Eleanor thought. She heard Richard's voice. To Pembury, you are the easiest move, and still I chose you. Yes, she said, I am certain. Margaret smiled. She rose, went again to the cabinet. This time she brought out something small, a ring. Simple, gold, a small stone set into it. It belonged to James's mother, she said. He asked me to give it to you. She held it out. If you wish. Eleanor looked at it. It was small, plain, nothing London would admire, neither large nor extravagant. But it carried something old, something real, something passed from one hand to another. Eleanor took it. She did not put it on. She held it in her palm, closed her hand around it. On the return journey, Molly slept again. Eleanor held the letter, folded in her pocket, warmed by her hand. Outside, the countryside passed by, still gray, but changed in the afternoon light, less heavy, less dull. And the small yellow flowers, along hedges, at the edges of fields, there were more of them now. Perhaps there had always been more. Perhaps she could only see them now.
By the time they reached London, night had fallen. At the door there was a note, small, tucked into the knocker, unnoticed by Molly. Eleanor took it, opened it. One line. Pembury is silent. We speak tomorrow. R.B. Eleanor read the note, once, twice. On the third she laughed. She had not meant to, it came anyway. Short, light, the kind of laughter that surprises even the one who lets it out. Molly turned, startled, said nothing. Eleanor stepped inside. Her mother was downstairs. This had become ordinary now, in recent days. The curtains were open, a cup of tea in her hand. Eleanor took the letter from her pocket, held it out. Her mother took it, looked at the envelope, at the single word written across it. Eleanor. Her eyes filled. James, she said. Just that, just the name. Yes, said Eleanor. Her mother held the letter, did not open it, could not. Her hands would not hold steady. Eleanor sat beside her, waited. After a while, her mother opened it, read. She said nothing for a long time. Eleanor waited. From outside came the faint rhythm of the street. London, distant, constant. Her mother lowered the letter. He told you to be happy, she said. He did. Her mother laughed, crying as she laughed, or smiling as she cried, the line between the two dissolving. Foolish man, she said, but she said it with love, with the kind of love that survives 30 years of regret. Eleanor took her mother's hand. They sat like that, together, in their small drawing room, before open curtains, in the dark of London's night. And Eleanor thought, tomorrow I will speak with Richard, and nothing is over. Everything is only beginning. London saw sunlight that May morning, a rare thing. Early in May, in the first hours of the day, the clouds parted and let through real, warm, golden light. The city was not prepared for it. People had dressed for rain, carried umbrellas, then paused and looked up at the sky. Eleanor looked too. From her bedroom window, before she put on her gown, her hair half gathered, half undone, she stood and looked. The sunlight stung her eyes. She let it. Molly stood behind her. My lady, she said. Her voice trembled. Molly always wept at weddings. She began before they even started. I know, said Eleanor. Your hair is not yet... I know, Molly. A moment passed. It is a beautiful day, Molly said. Eleanor smiled, looking away from the window. It is, she said, a beautiful day. The gown had been kept simple. At Eleanor's request, Vivienne had brought 3 dressmakers, 3 fabrics, 3 designs. Eleanor had looked at them all, then chosen the simplest. Not white, cream, a broken white, closer to the color of time, without London's polish. Vivienne had not argued. She had only looked, then inclined her head. It suits you, she had said. Everything will suit you now. Eleanor entered her mother's room. Lady Ashworth was ready, not lavender this morning, but something lighter, floral. Her hair arranged, her dress silver blue. Eleanor felt something tighten in her chest when she saw her. She had always known her mother was beautiful, but this morning? 30 years of weariness had lifted, just a little, but it was enough. Mother, Eleanor said. Her mother turned. They looked at each other, long, wordless, carrying years between them. Her mother stepped forward, took Eleanor's face in both hands. Her palms were cold. You are beautiful, she said. Eleanor's eyes filled. Do not cry, her mother added. Your eyes will swell. Eleanor laughed. Her mother laughed with her. The church was small. At Eleanor's request, Richard had asked, "Where would you like it?" Eleanor had thought. A large church would be London's spectacle, a stage for judgment, for Pembury's smile. A small church would belong only to them. St. Bride's small chapel, tucked behind Fleet Street, ivy climbing its stone walls. Few guests. Vivian, Lady Carlisle with her cool smile, a few of Richard's close acquaintances, her mother's solicitor, and Margaret Hartwell. She had come from Sussex. Eleanor had sent a short note. Margaret had replied with 2 words, "I will come."
Eleanor stood at the church door. When she stepped from the carriage, Molly adjusted her skirt. Margaret squeezed her hand. Her mother came to her side. "Are you ready?" her mother asked. Eleanor looked at the church. The door stood open. Candlelight spilled out, meeting the sunlight at the threshold, gold against gold. A week earlier she had spoken with Richard. A long conversation. Pembury, the document, Margaret, the letter, everything. Richard had listened, asked, thought, then said only one thing. Pembury sent the document to 3 people. Those 3 kept it. Eleanor had been surprised. Why? "Because I went to each of them," Richard had said, "and told them." "What did you tell them?" Richard had paused. "I told them about James Hartwell," he had said, "and Eleanor Ashworth." Pembury's move had not reached London. The document had not spread. It remained with those 3, quietly, in closed drawers. Pembury had waited for a reaction, for retreat, collapse. None came. And Pembury, tired, old, his 30 years of anger emptied, had chosen silence. As Richard had said, Pembury was silent. Eleanor stepped into the church. Her mother was at her left, her arm linked with hers. For the first time in all those years they walked together like this, shoulder to shoulder, both trembling, though neither showed it fully. The aisle was lit by candles, stone walls, wooden pews, sunlight filtering through small windows, and at the far end, Richard stood. Black, composed, upright as ever. But when Eleanor entered, he turned, and his face, she had not expected this. It had changed. Not broken open, but parted slightly. Something fragile, visible for the first time. Eleanor recognized it. He had once said her face changed when she listened to music. Now his was changing. She walked. Her mother released her arm, at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right place. Eleanor felt it, the loosening of fingers, the step behind. She continued, alone for the final steps. She stopped before him, 2 steps between them. Their eyes met. Eleanor looked into his, those brown, deep, rarely smiling, often thinking eyes. The eyes that had watched from the back row, that had written a letter, that had stood before Pembury. Richard looked at her, and Eleanor saw one thing clearly. He had not run. Not from Pembury's document, not from her mother's past, not from the name Ashworth, not from London's gaze. He had stayed. He had waited. And now he was here. The priest began to speak. Words came, old, familiar, spoken for centuries. Eleanor heard them and did not hear them, because she was looking at Richard and he at her, and the 2 steps between them no longer felt like distance. If any man objects, silence. Eleanor did not turn. She did not need to. She felt it. The held breath in the room. Margaret held hers. Vivian held hers. Her mother did not. Her mother was quietly crying. Eleanor had not heard it, but she knew. The silence stretched. No one spoke. Your vows. Richard spoke first. His voice was low. Even in the church, it seemed meant only for her.
He spoke the old words, steady, without tremor, but his eyes remained on hers the entire time. Eleanor's turn. A moment passed, brief as breath. Then she spoke. Her voice came, it trembled, only on the first word, then steadied. The priest inclined his head. Richard's eyes closed for a moment, just a moment, as if taking something in. She finished. All of it. The ring was cold. As it slid onto her finger, placed there by Richard's bare hand, she felt it. Not the ring James Hartwell's mother had left, but Richard's. And somewhere between the two, something closed. I now pronounce you. The church breathed again. Vivian made a sound, quick, stifled. Margaret's hands clasped in her lap. Lady Carlisle cleared her throat. And her mother laughed. A real laugh, short, low, but real. The same laugh from a garden 30 years ago. Catherine Ashworth, in a small stone church, after 30 years, laughed again. Richard turned to her. The 2 steps were gone. 1 remained. Then that too was gone. Outside, the sun still held. April had given way to May, and London in that hour was gold. Stone buildings, iron railings, wet pavements, all lit with it. Eleanor stopped. She felt the sunlight on her face, warm, real, rare in London. Richard stood beside her. "Are you well?" he asked. Eleanor looked into the light. She thought of the envelope left on the table, of Molly's trembling hands, of Vivian's arm around hers, of Pembury's smile, of her mother's locked drawer, of the road to Sussex, of Margaret at the door, of James's letter. "Be happy, Eleanor." "Yes," she said, then corrected herself. "Better," she said. "I think it will be better each day." Richard looked at her. That same small, fragile opening was still there in his expression. "That is enough," he said.
Her mother came to them. Eleanor turned, looked at her. Silver blue dress, uncovered hair, tear-streaked cheeks. Her mother looked at her, then at Richard. A long, measuring look, one only mothers possess. Richard did not look away. He did not retreat. He stood, waited. Lady Ashworth inclined her head, a small, dignified inclination of a woman carrying 30 years. "Good day, Your Grace," she said. "Good day, Lady Ashworth," Richard replied. A moment passed. "Catherine," her mother said, "you may call me Catherine now." Inside Eleanor, something settled. Not something large, something small, fragile, like those small yellow flowers by the roadside, but real. Margaret watched from a distance. Eleanor saw her, standing before the church doors, smiling, her hands folded gently before her. Her eyes were full. It was a good fullness, not of loss, but of completion. Eleanor looked at her. Margaret inclined her head. James would have been pleased, that gesture said. He would have been pleased, and then asked a practical question immediately after. Eleanor laughed. Vivian slipped her arm through hers. "London will talk," she said softly, for Eleanor alone. "I know," Eleanor replied. "And Pembury? Pembury is silent, and silence does not last long in London." Vivian studied her, then laughed, a real laugh, free of envy, clean. "I love you," she said. "And I you," Eleanor answered. The carriage arrived. Richard held the door. Before stepping in, Eleanor paused. She turned one last time toward the church, her mother, Margaret, Vivian, the sun, that rare golden London morning. She looked at all of it, took it in. Then she entered. Richard followed. The carriage moved.
They were silent for the first few minutes. London passed outside the window, crowded, loud, indifferent as ever. But this morning, something was different. Or perhaps Eleanor was. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Harwick," Richard said. "The country house." "We are leaving London." For a while. Eleanor turned to the window. London fell away, slowly, street by street, building by building. Stone houses thinned, iron railings faded. The sound of pavement disappeared. The countryside began. This time, it was not gray. It was May, green, open, scattered with yellow, white, violet. Spring had come, truly come. Perhaps it had always been there, and Eleanor had never looked. Now she did. Richard did not speak. Eleanor did not speak. But this silence, this was the silence of Hyde Park, of the water's edge, beneath the willows, the kind that did not grow heavy. They both knew it. They both let it remain. After a while, Richard spoke. "There is music at Harwick," he said. "A piano." Eleanor turned, looked at him. He was looking at her, with that slight opening, that new expression. "Is it a good piano?" she asked. "I do not know. No one has played it in years." Eleanor considered this. A piano untouched for years, in the country house at Harwick. Perhaps in a large room, perhaps facing the fields, perhaps filled with sunlight, and empty. "I will play," she said. "I know," Richard replied. Silence returned. But this time, there was something within it. Small, warm, new. Together. The fields passed. The trees came. And Eleanor Ashworth, the daughter of a fallen woman, the inhabitant of London's farthest edge, who had spent 22 years learning how to remain unseen, sat in that carriage, on that May morning, and felt something for the first time. There was a future. A real one. Tangible. Unafraid. And her face changed. Not because of music this time. Simply. Years later, London no longer whispered Eleanor Ashworth's name. It spoke it plainly and with care. Not because the past had been forgotten, but because it had been survived. The daughter of a fallen woman had not risen by luck, nor by silence, but by standing exactly where others expected her to break and not breaking. Pembury's voice faded slowly, as all calculated cruelties do when they fail to find their mark. And Richard Blackwell, who had once chosen her in full knowledge of the cost, never once stepped back from that choice. In a city that measured everything, that was the only answer that endured. In the years that followed, Eleanor became mistress of Harwick not as a figure to be displayed, but as a presence that could not be ignored. Her name attached charities, estates run with precision, and decisions Richard did not make without her. Her mother left the darkened room at last. The curtains were opened, and though London never fully forgot, it learned to look at her without speaking her past aloud. Pembury made one final attempt, quiet, legal, calculated, but it failed, and with it, his influence thinned into something old and distant. Richard remained what he had always been to the world, reserved, exact, untouchable. But within the walls of his own house, there was one place he did not stand alone, and that, more than anything London could measure, was what endured.
Thank you for listening to the story all the way to its conclusion. Don't forget to share in the comments which city you're joining us from. It's always a pleasure to see where our listeners are around the world. If you enjoyed the story, we genuinely appreciate you subscribing to the channel. Your support makes it possible for us to keep bringing you more stories like this.